Michael Elaine of the Copenhagen Voice at a meeting on food security. With me is Pia Olsen Dyhr, who is a member of the Danish Parliament for the Socialist People's Party and is their spokesperson on consumer affairs and food. Pia.
Which kind of standards do we want to have for food on the Danish market? So when we talk about functional food, we have to ensure a certain international standard because it will also come into Danish market. And I think it's quite important that we actually ensure that we have high international standards to protect actually the Danish consumer. So that's how it has an impact on my political work.
How do your political colleagues react to Codex Alimentarius and its recommendations?
I think mainly that many politicians doesn't really know what Codex Alimentarius is because it's not a huge discussion point. But every time the World Trade Organization has their big ministerial meeting, it comes up in a discussion in the parliament, and we have the discussion on which kind of standards should the countries, the rich countries, have on, for example, the developing countries' products. And in that respect, the standards has an impact, but in the daily work, it doesn't really.
Do you have any influence, or do politicians have any influence on Codex Alimentarius?
Yes, of course we have. We can set a standard in the Danish Parliament saying that we are not allowing pesticides in products sold at the Danish market. Then it will not be implemented in a day or two, but then the Danish minister has to work for that in the European Union, and when we have an impact on that, hopefully, it will also have an impact on the international level, but it's a long process.
There are some discrepancies between the Danish legislation, the EU legislation, and the Codex recommendations. How should they be resolved? In the favor of Denmark, or?
I think it's a compromise, as many things are, but I think the advantage for Denmark is actually that we have a high export of the different kind of food products, which means that we are quite aware that the international regulation is important, and that's why we actually try to influence it. And I think sometimes we can be a front runner and ensuring these standards.
You said the politicians have little knowledge of Codex.
Yes.
The public has little knowledge of the Codex Alimentarius. So is your role partly to explain what this body is?
I think that role will be quite difficult. I don't think it's that important to say to the general consumer that it's Codex Alimentarius who defining which kind of standards we have in the concrete product. I think the important part is to tell the consumers that we have a high level of security and worldwide at international level, and then it really doesn't matter the name of the organization or where it is, but what we're working with in any concrete action.
So it's basically consumer protection.
Yeah.
Consumer safety has the upper hand. Should the Codex standards be mandatory in all countries?
I think that would be difficult because I think that many countries will, for example, the European Union will still be reluctant to lower our standards because we have a high level of hygiene standards. We have a high level of materials products coming into the European Union, but also for products internally in the European Union. And I think as consumers, we are getting used to these high standards. If we're lowering them, we'll also have more sickness or more problems in general. And I'm not really sure that the elected or the voters on election day will give any votes for parties doing that.
We import a lot of food from abroad into Denmark, also from third world countries, but there are problems there with quality or with showing that they have the quality. What can we do about that?
I think it's very important every time we hire international standards that we ensure that developing countries have help so they can live up to these standards. Sometimes it's just a little bit of help if we can ensure their export that they still can export their goods, for example, to Europe. And And I think it's very easy just to hire the standards and not saying that we're going to make sure that funds are following. And I think we have to make sure that things are connected. Yeah.
Pia Olsen Dyhr, thank you much indeed.
You're welcome. I'm not that used to speaking English. Jeg plejer at forhandle på det, jeg kan ikke spille ord.